Hi everyone, it's really nice to be back with you again. Here we are, nearly at the middle of January already, and I don't know about you, Stephen, but I just can't believe how fast the time is flying by already.
Always the same, always the same.
It is. So we really hope that you have been following us over the past few weeks and that you're starting to pin down your why, overcoming any of your fears, any of your blockers in terms of meeting your goals, that you have set your goals and you're really starting to get some progress with them. And that more recently, you've looked at what your core values are. And if you're starting to get some traction on any of those, then you're in a much stronger place to start achieving the life you want and you desire. So here we are again, the Mindset Junkies with episode 4. I'm Allie.
And I'm Stephen, and likewise, it's great to be with you again. Really thankful for you listening in. So this week we want to talk about another interesting topic, which is about personal impact and brand. And now this is a quite interesting subject because historically people were looking more towards companies as being the brand, whereas there's actually been this shift over to people being the brand. And we historically associated them with the likes of Jaguar, Coca-Cola, Hugo Boss, Apple, etc. But just as one prime example, you might want to look at Elon Musk, right? He's got 70 million Twitter followers. Tesla, one of his companies, has only got 12. I say only, but that's a big number. But it's just emphasizing the pull that people are having towards people. So having a personal brand is just as important as having a brand of the company that you represent, the company you own, and so on. So we're here to basically first off start by answering the question of, so what is a personal brand? So Ali, how would you describe this?
So as you just said, Stephen, this isn't something that I think is an easy thing for people to actually get their heads around. So what we want to try and do today is try and break this down and make it as simple as we possibly can. So for me, a personal brand is how you come across to other people. Your brand is what people actually say about you when you're not in the room. And it's about who you are and what you want to be known for. So a personal brand is widely recognized as a perception or an impression of an individual based on their experience, their expertise, what they're good at, or any of their actions and achievements within an industry or a marketplace, or even just within a community. So they can be modified to reinvent a public persona. So I immediately, because I'm a girl of the 70s, I immediately think of Madonna, the pop star, who has regularly reinvented her music brand and a persona every time that she's brought out a new album or has done a global tour. And what she's done is she's matched her core values and her skill set to the ever-changing musical genre. And because she's done that, she has been successful through the generations in being able to remain relevant and someone who appeals to the ever-changing demographic. So as we've said, having a strong personal brand can help you create that important first impression through the way that you present and package yourself. So we just talked about Elon Musk there having more Twitter followers than his business has, because he is someone that represents a brand of innovation, being professional, about
sometimes craziness as well.
Oh yeah, he's radical. But the thing is that as well, he's shown that he is a risk taker. He is absolutely wedded to his belief in himself, but the belief in what it is that he's trying to achieve. And he has a work ethic that actually gets results. And people are drawn to the fact that he has this brand, he has this awareness, the way that he presents himself and the way that he conducts himself is something that is really appealing, which is why he is as popular as he is in terms of having 70 million Twitter followers. So we can all do the same thing in terms of our own brand. maybe not in the same level, but we have to have a brand. We have to have something that we're known for, that is quite authentic to who we are and who we want to be.
Yeah, I really like that description, because it kind of brings to life the importance that we all have in this world. And there may have been a time when, there definitely was a time when the company was the much more valued institute, right, than the person. And I'm not calling a person an institute here. But the thing is, there needs to be a recognition that we have a lot that we can bring to the table as individuals. And we only have to look as far as basically this, probably midway through the pandemic. So I'm sure many of you have heard of the Great Resignation that's been flouted about in the media. And it's where people came to realize the value that they had, and essentially that there was more to live in life than some of the things that they were doing. So this great recognition was, just the recognition of exactly what we're going to talk about today, that they have a brand and that it was very important, and that they're the ones that are valuable, right? There is an element of the company too, right? There are certain companies that are absolutely amazing at this kind of thing. But I think this just emphasizes the importance in this topic. And just that example, Elon Musk, it's not only him, it's the likes of Tim Cook as well. And there's many of the other top business leaders across the world that have a more powerful following than their own companies do. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
so
it is. And it's certainly a shift in terms of when I first started out in my job. It was more about the job that you actually did, rather than the way that you went about it, or how you interacted with other people. That wasn't as important as the quality and the quantity of the work that you produced. So it's definitely a major shift over the last 20, 30 years towards, it's more about you than it is about necessarily what you do.
I agree. And what we're definitely not saying here is that after this session, and once you've discovered your brand and your values and things, that you should all go out and resign from your companies, right? We're not saying that whatsoever. This is about how your brand can play a role in actually you going super, super far and adding a hell of a lot of value to the company that you work for, if you do work for a company, or it could be to your own business as well. It's things like this that we're going to talk about today that can actually help you kind of really accelerate the view that people have of you around the organization and the value that you have, your career trajectory, and so on. It's just getting in line with some of these things that's really, really important.
Yeah, and that's really why we kind of concentrated on core values in a previous episode, because once you really sort of understand what feels very authentic to you as a person, then your brand is then easy to build on top of that. So I always sort of think about, what is it that I want people to say about me when I leave the room? Or, if I was standing in a room full of opportunities, why would they pick me rather than, a number of other people in a lineup? It's because there's something about my brand that just appeals to that situation, that circumstance, or that person.
It's things as well, like that first impression. I think that's really important as well. That I know one surefire way, which we're going to go into the detail behind some of this, particularly around one that we've labeled alignment and feedback. It's when people first meet you, what do they see? What's their first impression of you? And that's essentially a gateway to then creating profound relationships about the different value of essentially the brand of you. And I remember one other thing, actually. There was a book that I read it was quite a while ago now, and I think it was by Reid Hoffman. So he was the founder and CEO of LinkedIn, or I think he was the founder of LinkedIn. And this was about you becoming essentially the leader of your own life, the CEO of you. And it's really important that, so we're talking about personal brand versus company brand here. But then there's a whole literature out there that's able to support this concept of essentially you becoming the chief executive of your own life. And if you think about it, it applies. Every company has a chief executive, so they're the one who is steering the ship. Every company has a chief financial officer, so these are the ones who are controlling the finances. Now, as an individual, you should be doing things like budgeting. Operating officer, so every company has one of those. And as an individual, you understand the way that you operate. things like that. Marketing, this is where we're getting into brand. So chief marketing officer. So this is what you'll be doing. You'll be kind of looking at how you can engage with people in the company you work for or in the business that you work with and so on. So the list goes on. There's all these different roles and there's a very likeness to the company versus the personal brand as well. Anyway, I think I'm going a bit overboard on this this one, Ali.
Great example. It's a great example about how you have to be the CEO of your own life. It's perfect.
Yeah. So what we have for you today, where we wanted to spend quite a bit of the time is focusing on 6 key elements of the personal brand. But before we move on to this, is there anything else that you want to cover off on this part, Ali?
No, I think, you make a really good point about that also important first impression. And I remember a statistic that says that your first impression lands with someone as quickly as it takes to blink your eyes. So you literally have a second, maybe 2, for someone to automatically have a first perception or impression of you. You really don't have very long to set the right kind of, the message around, what that person can expect from you over the next hour while they're having a conversation with you. And I just remember that's really not an awful lot of time at all, is it? So it's got to be right, but it's got to feel authentic.
Definitely agree. Okay, so shall we go into the 6 principles, the 6 elements?
Let's jump in.
Okay, so basically the 6 that we're covering off today is, first, we're going to talk about who am I, or who are you? And I'll go into each one in time. I'm just going to cover all 6 of them to begin with. So we've got the who am I. We've then got basically the focus, which is essentially kind of your niche. We've then got the alignment of this. So this is basically how you align towards it. So this is aligning your values, aligning your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and so on. We've then got the context, and this is the context by which you actually apply this into your own world. And then we have the application. So this is actually how you go and apply it into that. And then finally, there's the communication as well. And that's how you essentially, it's just as the word describes, right? How you're putting your brand out there and how you're engaging essentially your audience. Because that's what you're essentially creating here. You're creating kind of a target market and audience around what it is that you believe in. Okay, so we're going to start off with the who am I piece. And a really important part of this is exactly the same topic that we covered off last week, which is those core values. So what I'd ask is, if you haven't done the exercise within that core values piece, then please go back on to last week's episode, take a look at the core values, do the exercise, as this is a fundamental part of basically creating your brand. Essentially, what we're then doing is kind of taking those and starting to figure out other aspects of your life. So we basically can do something called a SWOT analysis here. So this is where we investigate our strengths, we look at the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. Understanding all these different components will help us then to understand a bit more about, as an individual, what am I really good at? What am I maybe not so good at? Based on what I'm good at, or even what I'm not so good at, what are the opportunities that will arise from that? So what can I potentially do? How can I help other people to actually have an impact on their life, to help them better their life, other companies to a better their experience that they give to their customers, and so on. And then there's that final part about the threats. So taking some of these, even the strengths, the weaknesses, what are the things that could potentially derail your brand and derail the perception? Now, naturally, quite a lot of the threats would come from weaknesses, but they may also be strengths too. So, Ali, do you have any examples that you just want to call out on any of these?
I think the one that sort of like really comes to mind is really when you're going for a job interview. You've got a CV in front of you. You know what your experience is. You know what your skill sets are. You know what you've got knowledge, and you know what you've that subject matter expertise. But also when it comes to some of the desirable skills, like some of the human skills that they're looking for, where you might have specific qualifications. Are you an analytical person? Are you a great listener, a great communicator? So, you start to look at where you've got your strengths, and you really want to talk a lot about those and really concentrate on those. But you've also got to be mindful of your weaknesses and actually try and identify the gaps in your knowledge or human skills that don't necessarily match with the CV. So you want to obviously identify those and look to sort of see what areas you could potentially change, or improve in some of those areas. But you're also looking at the opportunities that you have during the discussion for you to maybe talk about some of the other things that you can bring to this job opportunity or to the interview that really enhances a little bit more about what you're all about. And also start looking for the opportunities as well, where you may have some outside elements that would really help with your brand. So for example, if you've been put forward for the job by someone who already works in the organization, then you might want to use the opportunity or the leverage of that person to really help you get a foot up. It could be that you've just done some recent humanitarian work, for example, that you actually want to bring into the conversation, because again, it really enhances your brand as someone who, is happy to go and do some things outside of work, or, you've got a very sort of caring nature that, you want to spread, help and love and support, in other areas outside of your business as well. So you can really enhance the fact that perhaps you're really a strong team player. So there's lots of things in terms of that kind of situation where you would use this SWOT analysis to really understand where you can really play to your strengths, try and eliminate or certainly play up some of your weaknesses in some other way, shape or form. But the other thing as well is that talking about making that great impression, you would dress in a particular way, your body image would be different, you would go in with a beaming smile, with a very, very strong handshake. So, there's things about your body language as well that you'd really want to do to make that great first impression. So that was just an example I thought that was a good one to use for this particular who am I element.
I think it is a fantastic one. And, this is also demonstrating the link between the business brand and the personal brand existing as well. Because at least in my space, SWOT analysis is a tool that we often use in business, to analyze the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats in business. So, it's very interesting. And now with this topic alone, this is naturally the first up. And I actually think this is probably the most important here, right? You really need to get to know yourself, understand what your motivations are, understand what your passions are, understanding essentially who it is that you are or potentially want to be. Now, there's a really good technique that we can do around this, and it's taking this concept that we spoke about here of the SWOT analysis and doing some journaling around it. So doing some deep discovery. And by journaling, what I mean is getting a pen, getting a piece of paper and preferably a notepad, a journal, and just writing continuously about the question of what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What opportunities do I see? What are my threats? And just really trying to tune into your subconscious to get into the real detail behind who you are. Which, quite a lot of the things that probably come to mind to begin with, they're just at that superfluous level. They're like, okay, I'm doing these things on a day-to-day basis, and therefore these are the things that I am, or these are the things that I'm exposed to. But what you're potentially not aware of or you're not seeing is some of the real core things that really do light you up and that you're really, really passionate and motivated by. Maybe things that you haven't thought are actually possible for you to do, but deep down, you really, really want to do them. So have a reflection on those things that Ali had mentioned and go and play this section back again, because this who am I is absolutely pivotal to the rest and probably quite a lot of the other topics that we're actually going to be covering off in future sessions as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the next one up was the focus. And specifically, we've labeled this up. This is about kind of creating the niche kind of thing, because one thing we wouldn't want to do when creating the brand is to focus too broad, right? Because then we just kind of become a Jack or Jane of all trades, right? And not having any specific focus. And therefore people then become a bit confused about who it is that we are. And one surefire way to get this focus is to go out to people and ask their opinion. Go out, ask for feedback. Very simple way to do this. I do this with a number of people that I coach. And it's to just get Google Form. So Google Forms, I believe they are still free. And just put just a few questions in there. So it's things like, what do you see in me, kind of thing. So what do you think I'm good at? What do you think I could improve on? You could even do your SWOT analysis with them and just reframe the question slightly towards them. Send it out to them and harness the feedback. If you're on social media, you could even put a post out there. So what is your perception of me? And what people will then come back and give you is a bit of insight into essentially your brand. So it might be that they see you as a caring person. They see you as intelligent. They see you as annoying, just those kind of things. And I think this is really important to first go narrow with this. So pick, basically when I did this exercise myself quite a few years ago, I was suggested to pick, say, 5 people in different areas of your life that would offer you a different perspective. So for me, it was like my manager at work. I sent one over to my wife. I sent one over to my sister. I sent one over to a friend. And I also sent one over to a colleague. So, 5 different perspectives there. And then once you've done that, once you've harnessed that feedback, that will give you that initial perception around if the way people are seeing you is how you are seeing or want to see yourself. The next stage from that is to then go, right, I want to go big. And this is where we potentially link into the social media. So all people that are connected to you, people who essentially could become your target market. You want to know what they think of you in the first instance. Do you have anything you want to add on this one?
I would just say that, I think probably what we could do in terms of helping with some content here is maybe putting together a little bit of a feedback template that would maybe just help to get you on the right kind of thinking strategy around some of the questions that you might want to ask in specific areas. So I'm sure we can come up with a template around feedback questions that would really help to get you started.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's the same for the journaling as well. That I think we need to do some justice and get those journal prompts up in there. Okay, cool. So the next one then is around alignment. Okay, so this is then basically taking what feedback we've received. It's taking what our views of our own world are, or potentially where we want our world to be, and then thinking about how we can align it towards that actual future and making sure that those 2 dots are connected. So if there is some difference between the who am I and the focus, it's then a case of, okay, so what do I need to do to give people that different perception of me? Or if they are aligned, then fantastic. It then becomes, okay, so what is my mission? What is my beliefs? So essentially, what are my guiding principles? Why is it that I want to do this? You're essentially starting to create that vision and that mission statement around this. And we actually have a topic coming up on this because me and Ali had a discussion on the next stage beyond values. And it was both that balance between, well, is it the brand or is it the beliefs? Because they are both also important into this next stage of development.
Yeah.
Other things to consider is then about things like the competencies. So this naturally plays into the SWOT analysis because what it may be, I can give myself as a prime example here. So marketing was something that I was really weak on. So what I then did is identified the people that I wanted to work with to become better on that marketing side of things, to help me with the education side of it and so on. So for you, it would be identifying what competencies you're great at. So what is it that you can do yourself? And then what is it that you're maybe not so good at that you essentially need to outsource? Because when it comes to your personal brand, you do need to realize that you're maybe not going to want to do absolutely everything around it. And it might not be people that you engage with around the competencies, it might be tools. So for example, with social media, if you're planning to schedule a series of content to get your voice across, then doing that yourself can actually be quite laborious is the word that I'm looking for. I know firsthand because I've done it. Whereas there are a lot of tools out there that can help you with this, that can help you to schedule your posts at the optimal time, to pull on different content that you've created and all that kind of thing. So there's a whole host of tools out there that are able to help you with it. So essentially what you're beginning to do here is begin to think about more of that target market. And you see a link, market, target market. I'm starting to kind of think in that sense of the business, personal brand, potentially much the same. But anyway, Ali, on the alignment, anything that you want to add in here? Any examples to call upon? Anything to add?
No, I just sort of, Yeah, I agree with everything that you've said. The SWOT analysis is so important, and align that with, what is it that you want to be known for? What is it that you actually want to do? So yeah, you covered it all.
Okay, so the next pillar then is around the context. So this is around what situation or setting am I approaching that I need to basically convey my brand in a particular way. So this is where we're starting to get really, really specific. So for example, if we're taking the example of an interview, then is it a presentation that I need to do at this specific stage of an interview? If it's something personal, like it could be something to do with let's say a potential relationship, it could be I'm meeting my partner's family for the first time. So how do I want to be seen? The next one, it could be approaching a sponsor for a charity fundraiser. So you might be seen in different lights, but you might be following the same principles of your core brand, but you might just be taking kind of different views and applying them in different ways, which will come on to application after this. So for each one of these situations, we just want you to consider what impact you need to have. So an exercise here is to basically list 3 words that describe how you want to come across. So in whatever situation, it could be, for example, that in the interview, you want to come across as knowledgeable. You want to come across as experienced, and you want to come across as authentic. So then it's about thinking, so what specifically is it I need to do to basically come across as those things? So you're basically getting that context around that specific situation. Allie, have you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, you just pulled on another example there of, which I'm sure we've all been in at some time, about meeting your partner's parents for the first time. And, it might be when you're with your partner, you're funny, you're gregarious, you're outgoing. All the attributes that come naturally to you and things that your partner loves about you. But would they necessarily be the attributes that you would want to show in front of your partner's parents? That you perhaps know already to be, quite serious people, highly academic and very set in their ways. They may not get a great impression from that side of you that comes very naturally with their son or their daughter, but you obviously want to convey something that very much aligns with the situation, but also aligns with their values and the attributes that they place some value in. So you want to convey something that still feels authentic, but it still takes into consideration the situation that you're in. So you may want to think about, I've got to bring out this inquisitive side of myself, which is about me asking them lots of questions about them and how they met and their life, because at the end of the day, people really love to speak about themselves. You may want to show an element of maturity, because they will want to see that you have a mature approach to your relationship with their son or daughter. And they may want you to show an element of transparency about yourself, because they want to think you've not got any secrets or personality traits that you're trying to hide. They want you to be open about who you are, your family, what your goals, what your aspirations in life are. And when you think about that situation, you think, yeah, this is how I want to come across. I'm still that gregarious, funny, wacky person deep down inside, but I need to just temper that for this situation. I need to bring out some other qualities that I have in myself that are very specific to the situation and the people that I'm speaking to.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I do like that example. And I think once again, it comes back to that very first part, the who am I, what is it that you're going to stand for? Because the last thing that we want to be encouraging you to do is that you essentially need to put masks on and personas. That's not what we're saying here. It's about the context, in the sense of the message, the specific message that you're giving across to certain people. It's like, if you think of it from a company perspective, so they have a whole bunch of different customers who would buy different products from them, but those products specifically, they're different. Like if we just take Apple, for instance, right? The iPhone is entirely different to the Mac. It caters for essentially similar audiences, but it is a different audience. So the messages that they're actually giving around it is actually different around both of those products. The same for the watch versus the AirPods. I've got an Apple brand central here, pointing at everything I own that's Apple. But I hope you see the point that it's about all of these kind of different components, that it's how they all form together to form your brand. And that what you don't need to be doing is going out to every single person you meet and saying, I am this, and being really rigid about it. It's about kind of flexing it, isn't it? And flexing the message that you're trying to give.
Yeah, I think we said about focus and illuminate the parts of you which will have the best impact with the audience that you're trying to reach out to.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting, this one with the context, because there is often a lot of fear around this, about how will people see me if I kind of bring my true self to the table. But my counter to some of this is, what if you don't? And what if you kind of like keep that facade up in, say, your professional life, for instance, then to basically become unhappy and miserable, doing something you necessarily don't want to do.
Yeah, what is it they say about people buy from people? You know, you might have the best product, the best story, you might work for the best organization in the whole world, but if they don't buy you, then everything else just fades into the background. They've got to feel that empathy, that trust, that understanding, that connection, that vibe, that energy, however you want to package it up. They are essentially putting their decision making based on what they get back and what they see in you.
I agree. So we've kind of crossed two here, because we spoke about context, but then context is actually linking quite closely with application, because basically you need to figure out, so what is the context in which I'm essentially beginning to apply my brand? So they are both kind of much the same things. But just kind of one thing to touch upon with the application stage of this is to just think of, it could be, say, 3 words of how you will basically demonstrate your brand to the people that you're wanting to engage with. So it's just like those that I gave right at the end of the description. So like in that job interview, you want to appear to be knowledgeable, experienced, and authentic, and just orient the message that you're trying to give around those kind of things.
Absolutely.
So then the final one is then the communication, which this can sometimes be one of the most challenging, or it could be incredibly simple depending on what it is you're trying to do. So we have to think that it's not sufficient to only consider how you want to come across, but it's also about how you basically reach the person that you actually want to influence. Sorry, not interview. I've got interviews on my head. So this isn't always easy when you are basically meeting someone for the first time. So basically creating your first impression brand, so it could be your elevator pitch, that kind of thing. It's basically going to essentially be your de facto brand to make that all-important first impression with most people in most situations. So one thing that, and I know it certainly comes across with you, Allie, is basically don't join the energy in the room, but create the energy in the room. Yeah. The best personal branders, they are the people who they know who they are. They know what value they bring to the table, but they flex appropriately in different situations according to what message that they actually need to go and give across. So the challenging part with this arrives with that social media aspect. So in person, it's relatively simple, but the social media aspect is then about the kind of reviewing that message and thinking about how you're going to get that across and if it is in the right way, because, you know, a conversation, it introduces a whole new element of conversation, doesn't it? Because we've got the whole body tone, we've got the body language, all that kind of thing. Whereas if you're reading a message on social media, it's very one-dimensional. Just if it comes to the social media aspects, just think about how, just put extra effort in, basically, is what I'm trying to say, as to how you might take it.
I remember a friend of mine going for an interview, and she had positioned her CV in a specific way. She came across a specific way at the interview, but when the HR director went and looked at her social media profile, and she was there was a lot of swearing, there was a lot of drinking, there was a lot of falling over in the street on a club on a Saturday night. the perception that they had of the person they'd met at the interview and the perception they had of the person on social media didn't align. And therefore they got a confused message. Did she get the job? No, she didn't, because people buy from people, and they felt that the person that she was in her private life was the person that she would be in her professional life. So this is why we're saying that you have to keep your de facto brand consistent. If you can be known as being someone who's always got a ready smile, who is always asking people about how they are, how they're doing, and generally comes to every situation with a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm, that's not a bad de facto brand to have. That shows them that in any situation, whether it be in your private or professional life, this is the person that you are. This is how you package yourself. This is how you market and present yourself. Whereas if you are sometimes that person and sometimes you're the complete opposite of the spectrum, there might be a bit of a mixed message there. So what is it that feels very authentic to you, something that you can consistently turn up with on a regular basis and that you're known for being? I think that is the best way that I could possibly summarize how you find a brand that feels very authentic to you, but you can flex it up and down depending on whatever situation that you're in.
I like it. And there was a word that you touched on there that I was actually thinking before you said the word that, we should add a seventh element on here, and it's consistency. Okay. So if we look at from a social media perspective, and it was a perfect example with the interview, with the job interview, and kind of that person and their personal life versus professional brand kind of thing. Having the consistency across all of those is key. And if that's potentially going to upset some people, then so what? As long as it's your true, authentic self and you're not necessarily wearing that mask, then go with it. Do what you need to do. But with the consistency as well, for a lot of us, the brand part is now much more in that social context. So how are we approaching social media with our brand? How are we putting our message out there and that kind of thing? And for sure, one of the things that I've learned is that consistently showing up is key. It's key in just about every single area of your life as well. But if you consistently show up, then you will make a difference.
Absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I see it so much in my corporate and my private life that, and you get that when you do your feedback exercise. If you see that, you go out to 5 people and they're all saying or using similar words about you, you know that is how you consistently land with them. And you either see that as a strength or you see it as a weakness, and you need to change it if it's a weakness. So, look at some of the words that are people playing back to you, and ask for feedback all the time. But what words are they using to play back at you? And do you feel that is a true reflection of who you are? And do you need to adapt it and change it? Or is it something that you have to keep doing? So I like to use this thing: what should I keep doing? What should I start doing? What should I stop doing?
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's been quite a meaty topic, this one. As I emphasized with the first element, right? Spend as much time as you need to on that one, because the who you are is so important to everything else. If you don't get that right, then you will find the others so much more difficult. And just be true to yourself. Just be honest. Be true.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, and I just wanted to finish off by saying that this is a bit of a difficult subject for some people to get their heads around. So again, if you feel that you need any help or support, it's great to have a coach for a couple of sessions to just help you really get your head around this, and also to practice out some situations where you want to feel that your brand is actually landing. So again, myself or Stephen are more than happy to support you with that. We will create a feedback template for you to create some questions that you could pass out to a number of people in different scenarios, we're also going to do another little bit of a handout on this subject as well, going through the sort of 6-7 steps to this as well. And look, good luck with it. Play about with it. Don't be afraid of it, but it does play to your advantage in the end to just put, like you said, Stephen, a lot of time and effort into this and keep playing about with it until it is something that you feel is, you know, it is representative of who you are, but what you want to be known for. You know, if someone said to you, I want you to go and build a clone of yourself, what would that clone look like if you had the opportunity to like reinvent yourself? What would that clone have? But more importantly, what would they not have? What would you leave out?
Great point. So in coming weeks, we talk about a little bit about what's coming up. So we mentioned beliefs. We're definitely going to cover imposter syndrome in future as well, because I think this plays heavily into this topic about brand, especially the part about putting yourself out there. Because often we sit here thinking, I don't deserve to be where I am, or if I do X, Y, Z, then I'm going to fail. You know, those kind of things. But you know, what we'll explore is the evidence behind that. So, you know, these videos, naturally, they're on YouTube. Please do subscribe to us. We post these up every week. There is going to be a podcast element of these as well. We're just kind of getting around to setting those things up. By the time you listen to this on podcast, it will be live, so that's okay. As well, we have a Facebook group. So Mindset Junkies, we're over on Facebook. There's a growing community where just post questions on there. And between Ali and I, we will pick them up. As well, there's going to be some little value bombs that go out into that community as well to kind of extend the topics that we talk about in here. So yeah, please subscribe to YouTube. Please join us over on Facebook. Mindset Junkies, there will be a link in the comments for this video as well, or in the description for this video, along with the assets. So yeah, thank you for tuning in.
If there are any particular subjects that you would love us to cover as well that we haven't so far, just let us know and we'll factor them in.
Definitely. Right,
wonderful.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Great to be with you again and look forward to seeing you again next week.